Welcome to Club Fitting Chronicles.
Greetings, Club Fitting Chronicle fans. This is Gene. Josh isn't with us because he's got golf and he's got school, and he was not able to find a time in his calendar. Today, we are going to talk about 2025 and what's available. And then we're going to talk about some options. Drivers. I went to a couple of golf stores. The first comment I got was, people don't seem to be flocking in. There's not as much interest in the new things. There's a reason for that, the cost. And we'll talk about that. But the first thing that I wanted to talk about is the idea of what is out there. So I picked up and set down on the floor 25, 30, 35 drivers, every one of them open, faced. So pointing to the right. What does that mean? That means if I get it back to that starting position, if that's how I set it down, thinking that it's square, some of them are up to 4 degrees open. 4 degrees open, 24 yards right. If I happen to get back to the exact starting point that I was, providing my path is at the target line. If I happen to swing more to the inside, it's going further right. Length. A lot of them still 45 and 3/4, but some of them were 46. Who's that good for? I have no idea. You don't see people on tour playing that. You see people on tour playing 44 and a half, 44 and a quarter. Every once in a while, 44. Rory got down to 43 and 3/4 at one time a couple years ago. Why? Because you can hit it straight. You can hit it on center. It's easier to control. Lofts. A lot of those stated lofts, 9 degrees. What does 9 degrees means? It means it's probably 13 degrees, 4 degrees open. But if you happen to get it and put it in a position where the face is now square, it plays like 9 degrees. Well, that's wonderful, but most people don't know that. And two, most people can't do that. It's hard enough to see when something is square or not square. Our eyes aren't that attuned. And then you're trying to do it from standing 46 inches away from the ball. That's a challenge. Other things that I saw. Fairway wood still 43 and 3/4 inch long. Too long for most people. My fairway wood 42 inches. If you've been with us for a while, you know that we fit Josh's driver 42 inches. Why? Because he doesn't want to miss it, and he doesn't. We saw hybrids, the lofts. One of the things that we haven't talked about too much, but a lot of the lofts I'm looking at, it's like, okay, so you could stop with maybe your, if you're swinging 75 miles an hour, you stop at, probably a 7-iron, be your longest iron, and then you could go to a 3 hybrid. Because at that club head speed, you need about 4 degrees separation to get you adequate separation of distance. But again, I don't know the player. There aren't many of you out there who need a 21-degree 5-iron. At a 21-degree 5-iron, some companies, the lowest lofted hybrid is 30 or 20 degrees. You don't need one, okay? You're not going to get the normal separation, and that's the goal, is to have normal separation, not one that I can hit a mile and then the next one I can't, and then I have this big gray area in between. Other things, irons. It was interesting. Players clubs, weaker lofted. Game improvement clubs, stronger lofted. That makes no sense to me. Because who has more trouble getting the ball up in the air? People who need game improvement clubs. They tell you the center of gravity is much lower. It isn't. It's a lie. If it's a hollow body filled head, yes, the center of gravity is a little bit lower, but it isn't so much lower that it's going to make the difference. Okay? They're making them longer. That I found very interesting. Some of the game improvement irons started getting longer at the 8 iron. And by the time you got out to the longer irons, you were already an inch longer than what, quote, the standard has been for many years. So I don't know who that's good for. The cynical part of me thinks, just like with the drivers and the fairway woods, I can't hit this one, so next year I'll have to buy a new one, see if I can hit that one. And then every once in a while you run into somebody who's, I can hit my driver way better than I could hit my driver, from before. Well, that tells you one of two things. Either the last one really was terrible, or you stumbled across something that is fit better to you. Was it the weight of the shaft? Was it the ability for the shaft to repeat in this position? It's not doing this as it's coming into the ball, because they're not testing for that when they're building the club. Was it the face angle happened to be a little less open? It's not a length thing because they're all 45 3/4 inch long for the most part. Could have been you had a little less loft on the club. Could have been. Could have been the swing weight. There's all kinds of things that it could have been. Could have been the way the bend profile of that shaft made it feel better for you. But generally speaking, a driver head from 10 years ago, in fact, the driver head I play with, we designed in 2015, and I am hitting it longer today than I've ever hit a driver before. And the head didn't change. Okay, it's part of my swing changed. I've been working on flexibility. That's changed. But as far as new technology, there is no new technology. The ball speed coming off the driver was set many years ago, and our driver achieved that. And as a result, it still works just as good as the old ones. Every once in a while I get people who apologize to me. I got my old driver. As long as it's, not more than 30 years old, it's probably a pretty decent driver. If you get those little smaller heads, yeah, okay. It's harder to get you're not going to get the, quote, spring effect off of the driver face, simply because the face is too small, the surface area. But other than that, there is no new technology. They talk about moving weights around, moving the weight around. You need 30 grams in a fixed location in order to make a change, provided the golfer is consistent in their ball striking. If they're all over the face, it doesn't matter if you put 30 grams in the heel. It's not going to change a whole lot. If you're swinging 110 miles an hour, okay, you can use 10 to 15 grams to affect some change. But again, it falls back on, and you are consistent. If you are not consistent in your ball striking, it doesn't matter. And most people, if you look at their driver faces, they're not consistent at 45 3/4. Why do you think the touring pros are not that length? Because they're not consistent. It's hard for me to remember what I've said because this is the 8th recording of this episode because my internet keeps crapping out on me. But at one time, a couple years ago, Rory was 43.5 inches or 43 3/4 inches long driver. And he was only hitting at 320. Other things that I noticed, swing weights on iron still low. If it's in graphite, your range of weight of shaft for the 90% of the clubs that I picked up, and I picked up one from everybody, the weight of the shaft was somewhere between 60 and 90 grams. I found one shaft at 105 and one shaft at 115. Who is that good for? Well, that's good for kind of the older guy who has a rhythmic tempo. Is it good for the young kid who's really strong and really aggressive? No. Is it good for the person who is maybe a little bit, weaker? Yeah, okay, you can get to the 60-gram shafts, and that might help them. But as far as overall, they're aiming at about 25-30% of the golfing public. And that's, they fit probably about half of those people. There's the swing weight issue, there's the length issue. When you start making the longer clubs longer, that generally is good for nobody. If anything, I would make, you start at the 5, let's say 5 irons, the longest club, you start stepping down by 3/8 of an inch to make the shorter clubs a little bit longer for the average person, especially an older person, somebody 50 plus. Anyone who, complains about having, their back getting a little bit tight, especially near the end of the round, get them in a little more upright position. Do they do that? No. They make the longer clubs longer. Who's that helping? I don't know. I don't know anyone who's all of a sudden growing on the golf course where that would be something they would need. Other things I get asked a lot, where do I go to get fit? And again, any of the places that are using this stuff, I wouldn't recommend as the place to get fit. Why? Because most of these things, first of all, if they're fitting you, who's going to build what you are fit to? That's the question. A couple episodes ago, we talked about 12 steps in a fitting. I would encourage you to go through that. If they're not talking about swing weight, they are not fitting you. If they're more worried about lie angle, they're not fitting you. Okay? You don't fit based on lie angle. Adam talked about that when we were together, both on our podcast and on his YouTube channel. You don't fit somebody based on lie angle. Why? Well, first of all, how many perfect lies do you get in a round of golf? Lie angle is something that isn't all the time. I see this every time. It's not a slice. It's more of a starting direction. Okay. I could start it right and slice. Yes. Okay. But is that lie angle or is that the face is open? I could start it left and hook. Is that lie angle or is that face? I could start it left and it slice. Well, that's not lie angle. That's me open to the path that I'm swinging on. So to fit somebody and change the lie angles based on watching you hit a series of golf shots, no. I want you to come back and talk to me after you've played 5-6 rounds of golf. What are you noticing? What's happening all the time? Okay. All the time when I am on a fairly flat lie, I am seeing this. And then we would start looking, and I'm watching to see, are you a little toey because you're coming out of your posture? If so, that's not a reason to bend the club. Because as soon as you don't come out of your posture and you make a good swing, you get bad results. So what do you do? I would encourage you to go to Wishon Golf and go to his club fitting. He has all around the world club fitters. Put in your city, find some place that's nearby, and at least talk to the person. What do you do? Do you fit for lie angle? Do you fit for, is that your number one thing? Or are you looking at swing weight, weight of shafts, all those kinds of things? What's their philosophy? Ask that question. What is your fitting philosophy? Because the club heads, when I would have somebody bring me in their brand X clubs, okay, they paid $2,000 for them, and they hated the shaft because they got the stock shaft that felt like garbage. Okay, and we figured out swing weight, and the swing weight needed to be, let's say, D3, D4. I start taking apart the heads, and 5 out of the 8 irons has a 7-gram brass weight in it, which is the most weight that I could get into that shaft and stay below the top of the hosel. And it swung weight out at D1, and we're putting a little bit lighter shaft in there. We're not going to get that to D3. There's not enough room. Even if I used tungsten powder and corked it in there, I wasn't going to get it up high enough. it's going to have to use lead tape. Some golfers find lead tape offensive. I find it as kind of like my go-to. But the thing is, the major manufacturer stuff, for the most part, they're not you're not going to be adjusting it if you're at the shop. Now, if they're sending it in, now again, my question is it really going to come back that way? And how many months are you going to wait for that? There are a couple of companies that they have made, there are easy ways that they could raise the weight of the head. Some of the companies, not so easy, especially depending on what weight shaft you want to have. So one of the things, you've heard it if you've listened to the show enough times, check out the component world, because the component world leads the way. I think in 5 or 6 of the outtakes of this where the internet crapped out, I asked the question, who made the first variable face driver? Raise your hand if you know. Tom Wishon, back in the late 90s. Who made the first high coefficient of restitution fairway wood? If you said Tom Wishon, you got that one right. Who made the first iron head that was tested by the RNA and the USGA for coefficient of restitution? If you said Tom Wishon, you're correct. But there are other clubs, I had customers who would tell me, I was looking in the bag at the PGA tour stop at such and such, and I saw some lead tape over the place where KZG was normally written. Well, that's because they're not being paid by KZG. They're getting paid by somebody else, and they needed that club because it worked better, and their parent company hasn't produced what they are wanting to play. You get hybrids. I've been making hybrids since the year about 2000, I think, maybe 1999. Why? Because the component world was making those 400 cubic centimeter head way before any of the major companies that was being produced out on by component companies. I was making a little list, Wishon, Golfworks, KZG, New Level, SwingScience, Miura, Vega, Ironworks, Epon, all of those, and there are lots more companies. Those are, and I apologize to any companies that are listening that if I didn't mention you, send me an email and I'll mention you in another, who make original designs, okay? Original, not using open source material and making an iron head that looks like another company's or similar to another company. These are all original designs, and I have right here, I'm making this iron, the set of these irons, Tom Wishon. The loft on the 6 iron, I think, is 30 degrees. I hit that versus my PXG 6 iron, which I weakened a degree or two to, I think it's 28 degrees. I hit this just as far, but I hit it higher, and the ball stops. Okay? Because I don't have the club head speed I had in my youth. I still hit a 7 iron around 150 yards, but it doesn't have enough, there's not enough force behind the ball to create enough spin with the loft that I have to get the ball to stop. Where a couple more degrees of loft, I can do that. Okay, and I can get the ball to fly higher and comes down softer, a little steeper landing angle. Heads like this, again, I'm going to grab a number of Wishons only because I have those around right now. Hot face fairway wood, but the bigger thing, right here, right there, and in here, I can put 27 grams of material to make the swing weight what I need it to be. I don't have that option with anybody else's stuff. Okay. So from a component standpoint, that's huge. I can make that's how I made my fairway wood, 42 inches at D3.5. Not a problem. I could make a D6. Not a problem. Because I could add enough weight into the head. Other things, you have different technologies. You look at this. It's kind of flat across the face as far as this direction, top to bottom. Why? Well, designer of this said, I want more traditional or more regular trajectories rather than hit one high, hit one kind of low. What happens when I hit the ball below center of gravity? I get more spin because there's a lot less loft. This curvature is greater on most driver heads. So what does that mean? That means the ball does not, let me back up. Let's say it's 10 degrees right here, dead center. Up here, it's probably close to 13. Down here, it's probably close to 7. I hit it down here. How high is it going to get? Not very high. So as the designer of the club, the designer is going to say, we want to get that ball up in the air. So we're going to make it spin more because spin will get the ball to fly a little further because it's only 7 degrees of loft. Up here, the ball will spin a little less, but it's also coming off the face a little slower. Why? Because it's 13 degrees, not 10 degrees like it is right here. Most golfers, when they're hitting shots, I see a lot of balls struck right down in this area. So you're adding spin. One of the things that I was noticing in some of the drivers this year, a lot of them labeled low spin drivers. Well, for most of you, run away from that because low spin means center of gravity is closer to the face. Center of gravity is closer to the face. You know what that means, don't you? Tendency is the ball's going to go more right. That's not a good thing for most of you. But it's also, yes, it's going to spin less, but it's not going to get up in the air. So if you're playing in the Pacific Northwest and it's rained recently, it's going to be slogging through the fairway and coming to a screeching halt soon. So low center of gravity drivers, it's all the rage. What you hear about it. Why? Because touring pros, they can benefit from that. If you have a good upward angle of attack, I swing up at about 4 degrees, but I still use a 10.5 degree driver, 10.25 degree driver. And because of that, I get more carry. Because I'm coming up, I get a lot less spin, and so I get a lot of rollout on the other end. But again, I can build this driver because there's a weight port right in here, or I can throw 9 grams in. I can throw some more weight into the tip of the hosel or tip of the shaft, and I can add probably up to a total of 15 grams. So 15 grams, 2 grams of swing weight, so that's 7.5 swing weight points. I can build this at 44 inches and get a swing weight at D3 pretty easily. Now, that weight does, some companies will say, well, that moves the center of gravity. Yeah, it does. It moves it from about here to about there. I don't know many people that's a big problem. You're not moving that. The head weighs 205 grams. I'm adding 15 over here. I'm not taking it away from over here. I'm not changing it that significantly that the center of gravity is going to become an issue. Other things that I've noticed, I didn't look for this year, but in the past, and I'm going to assume it's happening again this year, with irons, step patterns, check them. One of the things that some of them will do, let's say you have a parallel or a taper tip shaft, check if you see the same shaft being used by different companies, hold them to each other and see, is this first step the same distance from the top of the hosel on all the clubs? Sometimes what they'll do is you'll see it's a little longer. What that means is they put a more flexible shaft in there. Is that good for you? I don't know. They've made that choice for you, though. So one of the things you need to understand, there are ways that they can manipulate that club, just like, you know, all the rage now, the Fujikura Ventus. Why is the one in most of the major manufacturers' clubs painted different than the original one if you go to Fujikura and buy it? Well, there's a reason. And again, from years of experience, my experience tells me that's not the same shaft. How do I know that? Well, let's say it cost me $600 to use that as the stock shaft in my new driver. That's the average price for a new driver. Well, what if I wanted to use, say, and I checked a Mitsubishi shaft that would cost me as a club maker $100 less than it would cost me to buy the Fujikura? Well, do I save money on that shaft if I put that in? No, I don't. I get to pay an extra $250 for the price of that shaft. So that $600 driver now is going to cost me near $900. In fact, I configured one driver that would cost me $1,300. That's why I got into club making. I couldn't afford $1,300 drivers. Or at the time, it was a $300 driver. There's no way I'm going to pay $300 for a driver. I paid $300 for my full set of woods, irons, and I got a tour bag with it. I'm not paying $300 for one club. So one of the things I need to understand, there are other options. And to get those options, some of those companies that I shared their names, they will produce the club for you if you know what your specs are. Now, again, you got to find somebody who can give you your specs. And again, I would tell you to go to the Wishon Golf and look on his website to see, is there somebody nearby, and talk with them. See what they're willing to do. If you got questions, send me questions. I can give you at least some ideas, some direction. I've fit a couple of people over the internet. You know, sending things back and forth. It can get expensive because postal rates have gone through the roof. I'm trying to figure out if there's a cheaper way to do it, but I haven't figured that out yet. Anyway, other things. Again, component companies. It's not this head, but there's a brand new wedge. It's in my car. And what they did is they moved the center of gravity higher. Now, what did we talk about with the driver? If the center of gravity is higher and I hit below the center of gravity, it produces more spin. Well, that's the same thing with an iron. And as a result, I have that in my lob wedge. I built one for a guy that I play golf with, Bill, and built him a sand wedge. And he will take your life if you try to pull that out of his bag because he loves that club. I love my lob wedge. I get the ball to bite on little knockdown pitches where normally the ball wouldn't bite under most circumstances. But due to that new wedge, it's wonderful. How much did that new wedge cost me? I think the total cost when I built one for Bill was about $85. Somewhere around there, maybe a little less. But again, just because you haven't heard the name doesn't make it necessarily a knockoff. They are all designed as original equipment. We designed this driver with Clay Long. Who's Clay Long? He's the guy who designed all of Nicklaus's stuff in the 80s and 90s. You remember the putter Nicklaus holding up at the Masters, the big thing. Clay designed that. There's a story behind that design. It wasn't designed for Jack. It wasn't even designed to look like that. But the USGA wouldn't let him do it. But this driver was played out on the Canadian, on the McKinsey Tour. It was played on the LPGA Tour. Ever hear of Tour Dynamic? How could you? We made 300 of these, and they were played in professional tour events. They went to the USGA. They passed the USGA rules. We got a notice saying make sure that the volume doesn't get too big, because when they're measuring it, there's a plus or minus. It's, I think 469 is the largest head that will still pass, and ours came in at like 461. But that was we slightly altered it from that, and it passed. We wanted to tell people what the CT was, the characteristic time on the face, because we got tired of people coming in and we would test their driver and they would come in at 218, 217. What's the legal limit? 256, 250. Actually, it's 257. And they would be bringing us drivers that they paid $400, $500, $600, $700 for, ultra cool, way cool, expensive, the top of the line. The face wasn't as hot as ours. The Wishon driver, our driver, we did the same things. We ultrasound the face. We measured every face before they were put on. Do you think the big companies can do that? No. So what do they produce? They produce heads that come in a little bit slower. They don't want it over 238 for a number of reasons. One reason is they can break. Number two, if they get them up over 257, because there is a tolerance, plus or minus, when they're working on it. It's very, very little difference between 238 and 257, how thick the face is. USGA goes in, buys a number of these from the store, tests them, they fail. All of them are considered non-conforming. How many non-conforming drivers do you want if you're a major company to be selling? None. What does he do? He tests all the faces. What did we do? We tested the face. We didn't have to worry about them being non-conforming. We tested them, okay? And then when we got them, we tested them again. We can do that when we're testing 300. It's hard to do that when you're testing 350,000 of them. You're not going to do that. Other things. Let's see. Oh, I had it in my hands. I promised this company I would share if I thought, wow, that was interesting. And I wouldn't say anything if I thought, wow, that was terrible. Newton. Is that right? No. Let's put it this way so you can read it. New shaft company. This is the 3-dot version. I've been playing the 2-dot version. It looks like that instead of that. And the design is the little longer section that bends. Okay. Very flexible shaft. You can see that. And what I have found is anyone with a nice smooth swing loves it. This is Adam. He hit this one that I just showed you, the 3-dot. It's for somebody swinging, say 80. I think it's 80 to 88, somewhere around there. Adam's swing is 117. His drive, and a little tiny bit of a fade at the end, drops down, hits it only like 300, 310. Hit my driver. My driver is 1.5 inches shorter than his. About 315, straight as an arrow, came down. He was turned and looked at me. I wish it would have been recorded. Wow. I love that. That's a 80-mile-an-hour shaft. But it's a very stable shaft, okay? And in the 2-dot, I've been playing the same course for 6 years. I know where I can drive the ball to. I know where I could drive the ball to when I was 63. I am out driving those spots all the time. Yesterday I had, yesterday was the third day I shot 72. It's a par 71. I've been struggling with one of the par 3s lately. Anyway, I hit, I think, 7 drives of 230 plus, where before I would, generally speaking, my expectation was around 220. At this time of the year, we get a little bit more roll in the summer when they pave over the fairways in Phoenix. But I didn't miss a fairway. I think I've missed 2 fairways in the last 3 rounds. I had a couple of drives over 240. Ball goes hot, nice and high trajectory, rolls out at the end. Everybody that I've given it to loves it. The only people that have not cared for it are those that swing very aggressively at the ball. They feel it's a little loose. Everyone that has that nice smooth swing have picked up some distance, and they didn't mind that at all. Mostly because the ball gets a little higher up in the air without getting a whole lot more spin. And again, for most of us, if we're looking for more distance, unless we're hitting down on the ball, how do I know if I'm hitting down on the ball? One way is you break a lot of tees. Unless, again, you're playing in Phoenix in the summer and you're just sticking a tee in the concrete, then anytime just about you can break it. But anyway, the whole idea behind the shaft, a little bit longer bend profile, where the club will actually then release. Again, if I don't hold the angle, and there have been a couple of people that I've given to who are not very good at holding the angle, they still love the way it feels. And what I notice is because they love the way it feels, they go after it a little bit more aggressively. So they pick up a couple miles an hour of club head speed, get a little bit more distance, ball flies a little bit further, get a little bit more distance. All good stuff. Newton, you can talk with them. They have a 30-day money-back guarantee thing going on right now. If you have a smooth swing, I would recommend it. To give it a try. I'm not guaranteeing you anything. I told them that, I am not a big believer that the shaft will induce. I think for me, one of the things that I look for is stability in the shaft. The fact that I get the ball more consistently up in the air is where I'm picking up the distance. The fact that I hit up on the ball, I don't produce a lot of spin, so the ball's flying further and then rolls out more. But love the shaft. Everybody, the other comment is they love the paint color. You see how it turns different colors. It's purple, it's green, it's blue. So you can wow your friends with that. Other just little things that most golfers, again, in the component world. I'm building this for a boy that I've worked with for a number of years in school. He lost we had made a putter like this for him, and he lost it, and heartbroken. $16 for a new head. The shaft that I'm putting in, I bought it at Dick's. So it was in the old barrel of shafts. I just found one that was stiff enough to use. That was $9, and we picked a $12 grip out. So we got about $35 into this putter. You can find it online for $80, $90, but don't be afraid to at least look into the component world. Again, some of the companies that I mentioned, they will build for you if you know your specs. Some of the companies, they don't do that. Another company I forgot to mention was Hireko. There'll be if you watch the podcast, or if you listen to the podcast, in the notes, I will have all the different companies I mentioned listed. And if I happen to think of a few more, again, my brain's shot. I spent like 6 hours making this 45-minute podcast because the internet kept crapping out on me. But anyway, I really, I want you to play your best golf. And I know that a lot of us aren't doing that because we're being held back by the equipment that we are playing with. Adam and I talked about that when we were on his podcast or YouTube channel. I play golf with people all the time that I don't know. And I see, played yesterday with two women, nice women. One was a mom and a daughter, and mom was older than I was, daughter was older than my son. Both of them probably 5'4", both of them with 45-inch drivers. Both of them had a variety of ball flights. Both of them had very repeatable swings, but they didn't hit the same spot on the face, and so there was 25, 30 yards difference between some drives. It was sad. There's no reason, the one comment I've heard time after time after time, you're boring. Every drive looks the same. Don't you ever miss the fairway? Thank you. Thank you for that compliment, because that's the goal. The goal is to hit every shot the same and every drive similar, and get the same distance so that I have a shot that I am familiar with. I do not like coming out of the woods. I really don't want to be coming out of somebody's backyard, or in Arizona, you're probably at the bottom of a pool. Those swings are really tough. It's being consistent. That's the number one thing, that golfers don't want to be embarrassed, and they'd love to be more consistent. And what makes them embarrassed is swinging clubs that don't fit them, but they don't realize how bad the fit is. And why aren't they consistent? Because the clubs don't fit them. Think of any sport where you're playing with equipment that isn't appropriate for you. I was a bowler. I carried a 195, 200 average for many years. I have a 16-pound bowling ball. You give me a 15-pound bowling ball, I cannot bowl. It takes me a couple of games just to get used to getting to the foul line and getting my arm swing into the right place and getting the release right. Why? Because it's a pound less. And I get it. My temptation is throwing it too hard. Again, playing football, we had, if you listen to Doug when we had him on talking about, the game ball. I only played high school football, and there was a ball that I wanted out on the field. I was a pitcher. There's a ball that I want in my hand. I don't want this one, Mr. Umpire. Give me the one in your bag. Basketball, point guard. There was a ball that I liked. There are other balls I didn't care for. They're all supposed to be the same, but they weren't. I played hockey. Curvature on the stick. Needed to be the right curvature on the stick when I wasn't in goal. And when I was playing goalie, there was a certain size length stick I liked. I didn't want it longer. I didn't want it shorter. When I played field hockey and I was junior Olympic goalie, it took me a couple hours to pick out a stick. How often did I use the stick? 4 or 5, 6 times a game. Most of the time I was kicking the ball, or hoping somebody else was going to clear it after it hit my pads. But it was still there were lots of options. Playing baseball, I loved a thin-handled 32-ounce bat. 32-ounce bat, 32 inches long. I loved that bat. Playing fast-pitch softball, I went to a 34-29. Why? Because that felt better. All sports, there are things that are right, there are things that are wrong, but in golf, everybody thinks if I just get something new, it'll be better. No, it won't be better, because it's probably produced the same way, the same specs that the other one was. All the companies do the same things. They're all shooting for this. And if you are in this little range, wonderful. But if you're outside of it, you're going to be struggling. You're going to struggle. It's the hardest game in the world to learn, I believe, after playing all kinds of different sports. And when you have equipment that is keeping you from doing what you need to do, it's even harder. So I hope and pray that you find somebody who can help fit you. If you have questions, please send me an email. If you have, we can talk. And if it comes down to building a club and sending you a club that you can play around with and see if we can make it right, I'm not going to be able to sit there and put lead tape on it for you. You'll have to do that. But if there's something that you're just struggling with and I can help you, I'll be happy to help. But you have to understand that there are answers out there. I've shared many times the last set of major manufactured irons that I purchased were in 1975 when I purchased my Hague Ultras. I had a set of rams that were given to me that's when I started to really realize how much there's a difference from one to the next, because those were set up entirely different and I didn't know what the difference was. But that's what got me on my quest, because I went from struggling to hitting everything pretty well until they were stolen 2 weeks later. So thanks for listening. Thanks for the emails. Thanks for your support. Thanks to our new podcast listeners from KZGolf, and for my guys and gals who have been listening. I would encourage you to go there. You can see my ugly swing. I complained bitterly to Adam that I didn't get to warm up after sitting there talking for 2 hours. And being an older person, that first swing always hurts. And I've had left shoulder issues for a long time, and so I tend to get a little right-hand dominant until I go, okay, I'm loose enough. I can now turn with my left arm and make a good turn. But anyway, I appreciated everything that Adam shared with me. What you see is versus what I'm thinking I'm doing are two different things. And since that time, I think my worst round of golf was a shot of 74. And if I could putt, I would think I would break my 66 when I was 67. I think I could get down to about 65, 64, the way I'm striking the ball. And again, it goes back to the equipment. You cannot find my equipment at any store unless somebody stole my bag and I walked in and found my equipment. That would be the only way it'd be there. There's nothing else like it out on the market. And everything that I used to build, same thing. Very seldom did we build something that you could have found on the market. With that, God bless. Hope you have a great month. Hope your Easter is a blessed one, and we will talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening. If you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to email us. In order for us to continue equipping you with great knowledge and content, consider blessing our show financially by checking out the links in the description below. See you next time on Club Fitting Chronicles.